Hi, this is Umair. We are on another episode of Better Tech. Today, we are hosting Zeger. We'll learn about his startup, what they are doing, and as always, we'll try to make it entertaining and figure out what the new startups are bringing to the world in terms of tech, and take their view about current funding situation, tech situation, how they see the world is moving. So, welcome to the show, Zeger.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Umair. How are you doing today?
I'm good. And with me, we also have Adeel Arshad. Adeel Arshad is a DevOps champ in his own right, a brilliant guy. So together, or the three of us, we will try to talk about DevOps, IoT, the startup, and CJ, and figure out what we have here today. So to kick things off, CJ, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself and your startup, and your, initial parts of your story.
Yeah, sure. So currently I'm the CEO of FlowForge, where we're building an IoT platform for the space, specifically for industrial automation. In this space, we're bringing DevOps to them. In many of their practices, they are lagging compared to web development, and we think we can make a huge leap forward with that industry in terms of reliability and repeatability of their deployments. And then previously, I used to work at GitLab, where I learned much of DevOps and the whole space. Most notably, I've been the engineering manager for the whole Git team. So anything of GitLab that touched Git, which, as you can imagine, was a lot, I or my team touched and tried to make it reliable and scalable.
Wonderful. So tell us a little bit more about FlowForge. What space exactly you are in? What stage of startup journey in terms of funding, team, and customer acquisition? So a little bit more getting deeper dive into FlowForge. Adeel, you can jump in if you want.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
So let's start at the inception. So the inception of FlowForge starts with OpenCore Ventures, which is the venture capital firm of Sid Sijbrandij, who's also the CEO of GitLab. And they're looking for potential open source projects to commercialize and push the community, the product open source further with an OpenCore offering. OpenCore means as much as the core of the offering is and will always remain open source. And there's an extension, a superset to this core where there's a license model around it. And that's how, the license is what you pay for and where you can build the business on. So the pre-seed was taking NodeRED, which has a very healthy community and very lively community, especially in the makerspace, but also industrial automation, and augment NodeRED with something that is a superset, and we can enhance the experience of the community. With NodeRED, we identified that a lot of the community were actually do-it-yourselfing a lot of the tooling they needed to deploy NodeRED. So that's where we started with FlowForge. So FlowForge initially was orchestration of NodeRED. So how do you create multiple NodeREDs? How do you make the deployment fast and repeatable and reliable and secure as well? So things like HTTPS and everything, the whole certificate dance is taken care of. And furthermore, it was multi-tenancy. So by default, NodeRED is multi-tenant. But as you can imagine, auditability in an industrial automation sector is very important to them because they want to know what changed when. So if there is an incident one way or another, they can understand what was changed and what they need to revert or further enhance. So currently last summer, actually, we closed our seed round led by Kota Capital, follow-on investments of OpenCore Ventures again, and some other smaller investing parties. And we selected our investors mostly to help us grow in the industrial automation sector, and OpenCore Ventures because of their knowledge in the open source space. And from there on out, we're now building a company and going to market with our solution. So this is both the PLG motion. So we have a free offering on our clouds where you can trial it and then you can grow in terms of adoption, and also top-down sales-led motion, basically, where we go to the customers, and if we know they're using NodeRED, we'll discuss if we, as FlowForge, can enhance their usage of NodeRED and make them more effective with this tool.
Okay, for a question to both of you, for a 3-year-old in tech, what is really NodeRED?
Okay, I'll kick off, Adeel, and I hope I'll leave something for you to explain. But NodeRED was started 8 years ago at IBM by Nick O'Leary, who is the CTO and co-founder of FlowForge, and it's a low-code integration tool. So if there is any type of event, you can drag and drop nodes and draw wires between them. So basically data comes in, it's processed by a node, and then through a wire, it goes to any number of additional nodes. So where this is especially interesting is in IoT, where, for example, if a message comes in through an MQTT broker from a sensor somewhere in the world, you still want to normalize the data, process the data, store it in a database, and potentially graph this on a dashboard. And so all the logic is easily programmable through the low-code interface of NodeRED. And this is also, the low-code aspect is also why it's very well adopted in industrial automation. These are not generally computer science majors or PhD, but they are mechanical engineers and electrical engineers. So they definitely studied, they know their area of expertise, and through low code, they are enabled to also do the programming part of their job and of the changing requirements of their job. And then secondly, what NodeRED and the community is amazing at is there are 4,000 plugins, mostly industrial. So if you're using a PLC by Siemens, for example, yeah, like click, wait 2 minutes, and then you can integrate your PLC with the rest of your network or devices. If you're using Bosch, exactly the same story. And so all major vendors are supported that way from the hardware side, but also the software side. So NodeRED allows a lot of companies to build integrations between their ERP and their MAS system, or whatever two systems they have. They're usually not talking to each other directly, but through integration software stack like NodeRED.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Adeel.
Yeah, so Zeger, you are talking about the NodeRED. So what are the key points like you have chosen the NodeRED? As you know, there are a lot of tools and other competitors are available in the market. So what's your competitive edge and the competitive advantages to using the NodeRED?
Yes. So I think the way the NodeRED community and Nick specifically brought the two aspects of low code and the integration together is unique. And there are multiple low-code toolings to build integrations. Think about Zapier, for example. But what none of these do is actually integrate hardware. So if there is a digital protocol, they all work well. So HTTP requests and all that all works. But what if it's a physical, like you need physical presence on a device to actually capture the data? For example, like GPIO pins or well, any CAN bus, for example. Like there are many digital protocols, but also very physical protocols. You need support to be of use in industrial settings specifically. And we can install NodeRED anywhere. You can run a Linux kernel, basically. And through that, the reach of NodeRED is just much broader. Yeah, so that's the main key, and I think a large audience also underestimates how big the compute space is, which is on the edge. Like, yes, cloud is huge, and there are a lot of servers in data centers all around the world servicing cloud providers and customers, but the compute that is not in a cloud is magnitude larger, like at least 10x, and then industrial automation. They can't bring most of their hardware to the cloud at all. So we need to integrate where the data is actually generated to normalize it at the edge, and then they make the decision what to do with the data.
So Adeel, I do have a few questions and DJ, which is more towards the startup journey, the PLG market, and so on, so forth. So if you have any more technical question in the middle, you can go ahead and ask them before we move on to that part of that. But I can see, DJ, there's a lot of growth in the IoT market. I'm an angel fund investor as well. So sometime back, I funded a small angel investor in a startup. It's called Grandeur. They call themselves the Firebase of IoT. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening around, and they were happening around IoT. So how you feel the overall IoT movement is growing? I understand that at the end of the day, we all will be in a connected world, and every device and everything will be connected. But is the momentum same as a few years ago? It's how the space is evolving itself.
Yeah, I think it's a fastly growing market. From what we're seeing as well, what the hardware vendors are doing, we're only getting started, really. All types of automation, or where there's hardware involved, like the time to change is a little longer. And I think IoT is right at the cusp of where everything is about to change, because hardware is either defect now, and there's a proper replacement with connected capabilities. And there's more of a software stack to actually support this data. Over the past 10 years, since IoT as a concept was coined, initially it was mostly a thought experiment, but right now we're really in the game where practitioners can actually practice IoT. So I think it's a very it's a maturing space, and there's a lot of business in the space. And where previously they were thinking about the benefits and it was mostly a thought experiment, now they are actually getting results. And by getting results, you see investments increase and increase. And also with our customers, what we're seeing is they start out small, but usually within a year, they're upping their license count already, because they adopt more and more of the solutions they're buying.
So one of the things that I felt with IoT was that, as you mentioned earlier in the talk, that I mean, the hardware, the devices, they're mostly for engineers, and then there's the whole software kind of a thing, and DevOps essentially initially were more like a software operations. So I guess a lot of teams are coming together who are trying to create that interface where electrical engineers can take, or other engineers can make use of the software, and vice versa. So I believe, so I think your product is also in the similar space. Is it a correct assessment that you're making the integration or the working of this a lot more easier, so electrical or engineers can use software, and software guys can do more of engineering stuff? Is this a correct assessment?
Yeah, I would call them both engineers, but yes, like the IT and the OT, like both come together through software, because that's the layer they both understand. So yes, there's a nice IT OT convergence as a trend is really happening. We are indeed in the space, but mostly in digitalization. So taking things that are physical and digitalizing them, normalizing data, and investing currently in visualization and understanding what the data does as well.
So talk to me a little bit more about the PLG thing that you're doing. So, I mean, as I said, the other startup that I invested in, they also created their product and offered it to the community and try to go through the product-led growth. So what's your experience so far? Is it really working out? And are there any best practices for a PLG? How communities are an important part of PLG? I mean, talk to me a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. So the advantage we got is that we're working with the NodeRED community. And the NodeRED community was established already, and we wanted to build FlowForge with the community, so we got more input from them. And PLG is a key part of this movement and this philosophy for our company. So we needed an on-ramp for the whole community. Industrial automation isn't of a, well, as an industry isn't really used to the PLG motion yet. And we've seen some issues with attracting the right, well, like the industrial automation large accounts through PLG. So that's also why we are a hybrid sales model where both it's sales-led and we do the enterprise sales motion, but also PLG to attach yourself strongly to the NodeRED community and allow them to understand what the value is. The PLG motion compared to other companies like the software dev tooling companies is taking a bit longer to mature, but we're all right with that. As long as we can work with the community, they provide constant feedback of what we're doing right and things we should improve. So in terms of like dollar amounts, the sales-led motion for us is more profound and more business defining at this point. But I do see a trend, and I do see a lot of customers actually try the product as an on-ramp, and in a later stage, they connect through the sales cycle to go top down again. So it's not a classic like bottoms up. I go to the first tier and then later I grow myself to the middle tier and then I end up in the gold tier and everything is great for the business on both sides. It's what we're observing right now is adoption of the lowest tier, and then they themselves reach out to us again to go in the sales-led motion.
Okay. And in terms of, so if your number is public, I mean, how much time, what is the traction that you've got so far in terms of the users or active things happening? I mean, how do you really measure the product adoption? Some people measure it through the number of events happening, some with the number of subscribers, some with the number of downloads. I mean, how do you measure your product adoption? And what is the kind of growth curve in the last 1-2 years that you have seen? That's two questions. And the third one is really how this current funding environment is treating you, or you're looking at it.
Yes, so our growth curve, what I can disclose is Q1 of this year. So we grew with more than 10% week over week on the KPI of managed instances. And managed instances for us means any NodeRED instance that is managed through FlowForge itself. So this could be on the edge, like on a PLC, but it could also be a cloud NodeRED that is normalizing data and storing it in a database. So the adoption has been incredible. So over 10% week over week. That's more than tripled in a quarter. So we're very pleased with the adoption of the community, but also of industry itself. And then the second thing, like our funding story. So this is the sales cycle in this industry are fairly long. So we raised, I think, a little more than you would have in other industries, but then the budgets are much higher of our customer compared to typical SaaS companies. So that's the remedying factor, and I think it still makes sense as a business to pursue this.
Okay, and if as a company, if I want to be, let's say I'm a services company or a professional services company, what can I do really to capture the growth cycle of FlowForge and be partner with it, so that if you guys grow, I also grow as a professional services company and can have engineers who can work with FlowForge. And Adeel, after that, you can ask your questions and then we'll move towards the end of the segment.
Yeah, so what we're seeing is that more and more factories are going to build their own software stack. So as an integrator and professional services company, you will gonna need a platform to build off of as an off-ramp and as a baseline of capabilities that you're gonna need anyway. So connectivity to from point to point, but also connectivity from point to the cloud, data storage and normalization and visualization are all tools that every factory is gonna need. We as a company do not provide solutions. We provide you with an development environment and with a quick on-ramp and a quick time to solution. It is for professional services companies and integrators to provide a solution. We do partner with integrators, and we provide them with training. There's if they bring on customers, there's obviously some revenue share that they'll get as part of the agreement, and they have a better insight of what the best adoption journey is for customers. So this comes back to DevOps, where first 20 years ago, just with software, it was very top-down in terms of adoption of new software stacks. And that changed, where developers are now making decisions on what components make up their architecture. And the same is happening in factories right now. So integrators are a vital key part of our strategy, because they understand at which point it is best to bring NodeRED and FlowForge into the mix, or if NodeRED is already in the mix, at which point there's a flip point where FlowForge creates so much value for the customer that they will want to adopt.
Do you have a partner program already, or are you working on it?
Yes, so both. We do have some partners already, and we're currently also extending with select partners based on geography, as well as like the knowledge they bring to NodeRED, and if they're already familiar with NodeRED and the space.
Adeel, any questions from you?
Yeah, like I will focus on the DevOps side. Like I'm interested to learn about on this stuff. Like Zeger, the implementation of DevOps in an organization is a very tricky. Like you have to face a lot of challenges and obstacles. So what are the main challenges and obstacles to adopting DevOps for IoT, and how can these be overcome?
Yeah, I think the main challenge for DevOps in IoT has to do with the split in organizations between IT and OT. So you have two groups, and while they have the same goal for the organizations, they usually have different ways of going about it. And this very much is alike the dev and the ops coming together over the last 10 years in the software industry. And as said before, the I and the OT are going to converge into, well, not one, they're not 100% going to converge, but they're getting closer. But as soon as you bring people closer together, there's more unsiloing, and removing silos always creates friction, because it gets diffuse of who has responsibility for what. And meanwhile, you still want to keep the quality up. You want to keep the repeatability and the reliability of your software systems top notch. And software has a huge potential there to guide people on the right path, to provide guardrails. So all these things that are on the side of the organizational change that is happening are just taken care of, and it's very hard to stray off the proven path.
Yeah, as you know, like in DevOps, the most stuff is related to the automation, like to make it more automate and make it profitable, like you have to adopt a best practices for that. Like if you have automated and a bad practices, then you are in a loss. So how you are making sure like you are adopting, and what is your criteria of evaluation for the best practices to implement the DevOps?
Yeah, so specifically, we apply this to NodeRED. So we see how people are adopting NodeRED and what they're doing with NodeRED. And again, we're providing the guardrails for them. If they want to go left or right of those guardrails, then sure, you're still able to. But it's much easier to stay on the path that we'd recommend you to take. So for example, the multi-tenancy, one of the first features we built, or the quickly and reliably, but also securely spinning up new NodeRED instances in the cloud, is a good example of where we're aiding them with tooling to practice DevOps. And currently we're also building ways where they can fork a running NodeRED so they can develop it not on production load. So what we're seeing in industrial automation a lot is that they actually physically go to a PLC and they change the logic of this PLC and they observe what happens to the machine, which has physical safety concerns, but also it takes a lot of time to get this right, where what you want to do is actually isolate your experiment, test your experiment, and then deploy it. And also, if it doesn't work, allow you a very fast rollback to a version that works as expected, or at least has a baseline performance.
Okay. So how do you see the future of IoT and the DevOps evolving in the next few years?
Yes, I'm gonna go with the must-used quote: "Software is eating the world." Like, this is also true in the factory. So IoT and DevOps are going to be used in industrial automation a lot more, and it's going to be defining for their business. So they too will hire more software-oriented developers, whether their background is in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, or anything else. And this trend will continue on for at least 15, 20 years until they fully caught up with the software world. Their time to replacement of hardware is fairly low, so it's much easier and cheaper for them to iterate and improve on the software stack. And they will continue to do so until, like the investment doesn't warrant the payoffs anymore, or vice versa, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, good to know that.
So Zeger, thank you. Quite enlightful discussion. A couple of last questions, and we'll just wrap up. So, I mean, what's FlowForge's this year plan? I mean, how you or 2 years vision, where you want yourself to be in the couple of years, and what are the important success matrices that you're following? Yeah.
So the trend we identified is that people are using less and less off-the-shelf products, and that they're going to build their own software stack. So FlowForge has to become the software layer that they built on top of. So an infrastructure layer project that is almost like the Linux kernel for a lot of software developers. You start with Linux and then you build your solution on top. So FlowForge will be the kernel for factory development. And they will build distinct applications with FlowForge, and through that, NodeRED will be adopted widespread. So that is where we're going to be in 5 years. What was the second question again?
This was the question.
Okay,
just a side question. How big is your team right now, and how you're growing it?
So last year around this time we were with 5. Right now we're at 12. So that is more than doubled in the last year. We're currently hiring for 3 roles, so we continue on with investing in the space, and the feedback we're getting from customers is very hopeful, and the growth we're seeing in terms of pipeline as well as revenue has been really encouraging for us to continue this growth.
And if a company wants to start working with you, what's the most sweetest spot that they can help you and you can help them?
It usually depends on who adopts FlowForge or who wants to adopt FlowForge. But on the engineering layer, we are an open core product, so they get to install our software themselves on their own hardware. And through that, the adoption usually starts, and then after a while, they'll knock on our door to professionalize this rollout. Or if you are a director or up in the organization, then usually they reach out to us for a demo, understand the value they can provide to the rest of their organization. And at one site, we usually start a proof of concept and work our way from there to a deployment that makes sense for them.
Okay. So I guess I'm good over here, Adeel. If you're also good, we'll wrap it up. And Zeger, thank you very much for being with us today. I think it was a great insight into the startup that you're building, and all the best wishes for the ongoing success. I and Adeel will also talk and think how we can kind of work together to be part of the movement that you're trying to creating, and if there are any opportunities. So thank you very much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Enjoyed the conversation, and again, thanks for having me.